Amidst all the Mitch Marner trade rumors, Elliotte Friedman on his latest 32 Thoughts podcast came out and revealed a major trade update for the Toronto Maple Leafs star. So I'm going to break down what that report entails, as well as discuss what the Leafs' plan is for Marner according to him, and what he said may surprise you. So I'm going to break all that down in this episode. Before we do, if you're part of the 80% who are not subscribed and are watching our daily Leafs videos, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We're on the road to 10,500 subscribers, and we're getting pretty close, and it would mean the world to Darius and myself if you could do that. But Darius, Elliotte Friedman came out and revealed some very interesting information regarding Mitch Marner, and we've been going over some trade reports, some trade speculation, Brady Tkachuk for Mitch Marner, all these crazy things. And Friedman came out today on his 32 Thoughts podcast and revealed some interesting information. So let's just dive right into it. Now he starts with the Marner Berube talked at the coffee shop. He talked about some of the contract negotiations that are going on, but we'll start with this screenshot here. So Elliotte Friedman thinks there's real concern to how Toronto fans will react to Marner if he starts next year unsigned. And Friedman wonders if Marner bets on himself. Could he handle the pressure and the noise? And that's something we haven't really spoke about much as of late, was the possibility of Mitch Marner extending in Toronto. And that's what Elliotte Friedman kind of breaks down in his podcast. And he says, people in the Leafs organization are worried about marking a deal because they are mad at Marner. People don't want this to turn into Kadri 2.0 where he has success elsewhere. Friedman could see him wanting to go somewhere without a spotlight on him. And he says the Marner-Toronto situation will take a lot of diplomacy. And Merrick wonders if Marner can handle the pressure and noise if he goes into next year without an extension or trade. So again, we've been talking about the trades a lot. Friedman kind of takes a different perspective on it and is focusing more so on the contract negotiations, and that the Leafs could trade Marner if Marner wants or requests a trade. But it's a very good point he made about the contract negotiations. They could just, you don't want to trade Mitch Marner and then have him have success elsewhere, but you also don't want a Kadri 2.0 situation here.
No, it looks like if you're going to trade Mitch Marner, like you're probably going to lose the trade and he's probably going to go somewhere and find success. I mean, look at Zach Hyman right now and some other Leafs that are on the Edmonton Oilers, or former Leafs, I should say. So It is a tricky situation, right? But when you look at Mitch Marner, and I thought Elliotte Friedman had another really good quote where you can kind of read in between the lines from his latest 32 Thoughts podcast, where he's basically saying, if Mitch Marner doesn't sign for less, and this is from the perspective of the Leafs, then we're going to trade you. We have to move on because the salary doesn't work and you're clearly not working here in this role, in the playoffs, all of that. So, reading in between the lines of what Elliotte said, I'm basically reading it as the Leafs are saying, sign for less and we'll keep you here. No problem. And we can build a team still around this core, right? But I just don't think that's going to happen. And I think Marner would, I have no insider information on this, but I think Marner, would rather play somewhere where there's less spotlight. He can make more money. And that's just the vibe I'm getting right now. And, it's just not going to work on the Leafs if he wants 12 million. It's just not.
And that's exactly what it comes down to, is the Leafs aren't going to lose him for nothing. And if they know that Marner's not going to take a contract that is a little bit less, so that way the Leafs can actually, raise their ceiling a little bit for a team that has not been able to win more than one series since 2018, then that's what it's going to happen. Let's get into one of the quotes you mentioned. And you obviously know Mitch Marner's stats here. Great player. We're not arguing that. We're arguing the ability for him to be one of the best players on a Stanley Cup contending team where the playoffs or the spotlight is high in the playoffs. And this is what kind of the quote you're referring to earlier. This is the exact quote from Elliotte Friedman. Quote, don't be surprised if Marner's situation plays out over the next season in Toronto. If the contract demands on both sides are crazy, it could lead to a divorce. But on June 2nd, I'm not concerned that Marner will be traded. And I tend to agree with that from Elliotte Friedman. Like, we've been mentioning this the whole time. A trade is not going to happen right now. It's going to happen either later, over the next couple months maybe, or further
July
than that.
1st.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. At the very least. And for a few reasons. Obviously, you have July 1st. You also have the fact that they're going to be doing ongoing contract negotiations. Like, if the price is right, I'm sure Brad Living in the front office wants to bring Mitch Marner back, because if they trade him, the PR, the fans, everything will be not necessarily upset, but the spotlight will be on them more. But it just makes no sense for them to trade him right in this very moment. I think they're going to try to work out something, and it makes sense as well to just, if you're going to trade him, which I think they probably will end up doing at some point, garnering them as many offers as you can from multiple teams, seeing if maybe Mitch Marner opens up his no move clause to more teams the longer he waits and the more he realizes that the Leafs aren't going to bring him back. Like, there's a lot of factors playing in here, and that's what Elliotte Friedman's saying.
Yeah, there's a lot here. Like Mitch Marner, when he first came to the Leafs, he was like the hometown boy, and this was like so great. These guys want to come back and play for the Leafs, and he has so much skill. Somewhere along the line in the last couple of years, he has become the villain. It just is what it is. He has become that, he's taken that spot as the villain on the team. And if he were, and I think it's the most, I won't say most likely outcome, but the best outcome for both parties is Mitch Marner takes less and stays, because the Leafs are not going to win a Mitch Marner trade. It's just the fact of the matter. You might build your team a little bit better. Like, you're not going to win it straight up the trade, but the team might be better for it. Sure. But you're not going to win a Mitch Marner trade. So the best outcome is he signs for less. He's still a part of a team where they can add more pieces to it. But I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't get the vibe that Mitch Marner would want to do that. I think he'd rather play somewhere else and make his money, which is okay. At the end of the day, these guys want to make their money. That's fine. But he could really flip the narrative here if he signed for significantly less, right? I just don't think it's going to happen, but I think that would be best for both parties. So it's going to come to a head, and it's going to come to a head soon, because after July 1st, he's paid his bonus and he's officially a free agent after that, basically. Like, if someone is to acquire him next season or this offseason, they don't even have to pay him anything, really. So it's going to be very interesting to watch. I just don't get the vibe that the best outcome for both parties is going to happen. So I would look for him to be traded, because it's not just him either. It's the core. The idea of the core does not work. It's just that I don't think you can move on from the other pieces. He's the odd man out, right? And obviously he's a free agent after next season.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Like, it's not like he's a pending UFA right now. He's not a free agent right now. He has one more year, but their time to trade him and get the value that they want is going to be decreasing really by the day. But you have obviously the set points. You said July 1st. Obviously, if you're going to trade him before the season, you'll get the most value, because then he hasn't a full year with the team. If you trade him at the deadline, a little bit less value, because that's half the season already gone. But the longer you wait, the less they're going to get. So that's why Friedman's saying, I don't think they're going to trade him right now. But if they're going to trade him, like, personally, I would rather them trade him before the season rather than go halfway into the season, see 100%. Things aren't working, and then trade him. Because if you start the season with Mitch Marner, you're running into the problem with, if he doesn't perform well, the same things keep happening that we've seen in the past few years. Like, yeah, he's going to get his points in the regular season. But if the team looks similar under Craig Berube as it did with Sheldon Keefe, which hopefully doesn't happen, I don't know how you have trust in a team. You're just banking on the same core four performing well in the playoffs. And then if that happens and you flare out again, then you're stuck with Mitch Marner being a pending free agent, and then he's gone. So, like, they have to make a decision one way or the other, either extend him or trade him. And I think trading him at the deadline is probably the worst case scenario, aside from him leaving for nothing. But for some reason, I'm getting the feeling that it might also be the most likely case scenario. Not most likely, but a possible case scenario if they just don't think is going to work. And you go back to the coffee shop picture. Maybe this happens because they're going to try to see how it goes under the new coach, Craig Berube. And then if it doesn't go well, then they decide to move on. That's the worry a little bit for me.
And I think that's fine. If he comes back next season, in a way, that's fine. But the thing for me is, if you're the Leafs and you go into next season with Mitch Marner unsigned, absolute disaster. It's an absolute disaster, because your only option besides doing the exact same thing you've been doing for the last 6 years, which we know doesn't work, is to trade him at the deadline where it's not going to work. You're going to lose that trade 100 times out of 100, right? So if you go into this new season without any progress on anything, it's an absolute disaster. I could see him coming back next year for sure. It's just, what does the contract look like? Maybe he signs an extension because he can this summer, right? So I could see them, maybe let's try it with Berube. I could see that happening. But if there's no progress on anything, if he just comes back into the, next season, there's no contract extension, there's no talks of trade, it's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster heading into the trade deadline.
Yeah. And before we wrap up, a couple things on this. So we'll go over this quote here. He said he's heard from a few people not to be surprised if this plays out over next season. Very delicate situation. And Friedman says Marner camp won't do anything that makes them look bad, which isn't really surprising there. And then before we wrap up, we'll go into some of the negotiations. He said the delicate negotiations between player and team aim for is a win-win, but with the Leafs seeking a beneficial trade or strategic use of cap space, concerns include fan reactions. They fear Marner could thrive as a great player in a quieter market. So, like, a Marner trade is very convoluted for that to happen. But if it gets to the point where they don't think a contract extension will get done, hopefully they trade the player. But let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on all this. Obviously, Marner's a phenomenal player, and I think he will do good. I mean, if you're trading a guy like Mitch Marner, he's going to do good no matter where he goes. And you can't really think like that, in my opinion, because if you do, it's just not working for the Leafs. So it doesn't matter if he strives good elsewhere. The Leafs can't win a cup, at least from what we've seen so far with Mitch Marner as the main player. So let us know your thoughts are on this Elliotte Friedman quote, a lot of little updates here, and this is kind of taking the more contract and camp perspective of it, and how they seem to be really fearing a Mitch Marner trade from ownership's perspective, from Mitch Marner's camp perspective as well. They're not going to do anything to make him look bad. So let us know what your thoughts are on that as well. And make sure to hit the subscribe button. We're on the road to 10,500. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you soon.